The concept and match type known as Money in the Bank has been one that's been a staple of WWE programming since the inception of the concept. As such, there's a lot of trivia about the event and loads of cool fun facts which you can share with your friends after peeping this video. Which, if you go on to enjoy it by the way, it would help me out tremendously if you consider dropping a like on the video, as well as a comment saying who your favorite Money in the Bank winner is, or what your favorite fact from this video is. Oh, also while you're down there, you should totally subscribe for more videos like this. Okay, anyways, the first thing you should know going into this year's show is that with both the men's and women's matches this year, there will have been 33 ladder matches for the briefcase. 27 of those matches have taken place at the Money in the Bank event, while 5 have happened at WrestleMania prior to the stipulation getting its own event. If you're wondering, the remaining match happened on an episode of SmackDown following controversy over James Ellsworth, a man, technically being the first person to pull down a women's Money in the Bank contract for Carmella. Carmella was declared the first Miss Money in the Bank in both the match at the event itself as well as the one on SmackDown, aka she just won both, which ultimately gave her the unique honor of being the first woman to win the contract twice. However, she's not the first person to win it twice, as back in the years 2008 and 2009, the first man to win the briefcase did so twice at WrestleMania. And if you didn't know him, he's a little bit under the radar, his name's CM Punk. And while we're talking about when the match happened at Mania, did you know that Mr. Kennedy was the winner of the 2007 Money in the Bank contract? However, due to Kennedy suffering an injury at the time, Edge would beat Kennedy in a match for the contract, marking the first time ever that this sort of thing occurred. The first, but not the last, as 13 years later, a white-hot babyface Otis would win the contract in, let's say, a bit of a funny way. This, while certainly unique, was a decision made without much forward thinking at the time. As such, Otis unfortunately would need to drop this contract, or lunchbox, whatever you want to call it, and would do so at Hell in a Cell to The Miz. The Miz in particular was also the only other man to hold the contract twice, but technically not win the ladder match twice, of course. However, in The Miz's original cash-in during a 2010 episode of Raw, there was quite an angry fan that became a meme in the wrestling space for quite a while, simply known as Angry Miz Girl. She would even be invited out to another episode of the show for the Slammies, specifically because the meme became that popular. And while this young lady would be upset because Miz won, there were also plenty of young fans in the arena that were similarly upset when John Cena lost his cash-in via the Big Show interfering. This would of course be the very first time a person lost their cash-in match. But in addition to Cena in 2012, there would be 4 other contract holders who would lose their cash-in. Those would be Damien Sandow in 2013, Baron Corbin in 2017, Braun Strowman in 2018, and Austin Theory in 2022. This would make the men's contract holder win percentage about 85% today, whereas the ladies are still sitting pretty at 100% of their cash-ins being wins. Another notable thing about women's cash-ins is that out of the 7 briefcase holders, 5 of them have cashed in their contract in the first 24 hours after winning it. Well, technically in the case of Asuka, she instead was awarded the Raw Women's Championship after it was revealed that Becky Lynch was pregnant, and that the briefcase from last night held the title inside. It's kind of the same thing. Becky Lynch is also commonly known to be one of the 4 Horsewomen, a very illustrious group of very talented women. However, the only woman from that illustrious group to have won Money in the Bank is none other than Bayley. Additionally, Bayley's cash-in is the fastest in women's history, as after winning it earlier in the night, she would successfully cash in on Charlotte Flair after just 85 minutes of holding the contract. She wouldn't be the fastest cash-in ever though, as that honor goes to the mayor of Knoxville and the devil's favorite Demon Kane, who cashed in the blue briefcase to win the World Heavyweight Championship in 50 minutes. Kane was 43 at the time of competing in the Money in the Bank ladder match, but he wasn't the oldest competitor in the match's history, as that unique honor would go to none other than Ric Flair, who competed in the match at WrestleMania 22 when he was 57 years old. Conversely to Flair, who was unable to win the briefcase on that night, the youngest performer to actually capture the contract is none other than Austin Theory, who won the match at the age of 24. Theory would also be the first person in history to cash in on a championship that wasn't a world title, thus making it clear that the contract was available to cash in on any title in the WWE. Also, I made a whole video documenting Austin Theory's career if you want to check that out after this one. And well, Austin Theory was notably a rather big fan of John Cena, who has the unique distinction of being the man cash in on the most, having been targeted 3 separate times. With both Edge and Rob Van Dam cashing in their contracts in 2006 on Cena, both becoming champion in the process, as well as years later, Damien Sandow of course unsuccessfully cashed in on the leader of the C Nation. Shifting back to Edge for a minute, out of all the men in WWE history to have held the contract, Edge was the longest holder at 280 days. However, the women managed to beat out the men in their first go with the contract, as Carmella held on to hers for 287 days before successfully cashing in on Charlotte Flair to become champion. Similarly to Cena, Charlotte would be the most cashed in on woman, with her also having 3 different Miss Money in the Banks take her title from her. Those names of course being Carmella, as well as Bayley and Nikki ASH, who of course all secured the briefcase and then successfully cashed in on Charlotte. Compared to these former Money in the Bank ladder match winners, the woman who has lost the most Money in the Bank ladder matches is Natalya, who has a record of 0-5, as well as she's the woman who's competed in the most of these matches. However, she's not the performer who's competed in the most, as Kofi Kingston holds the distinction of being the biggest loser in Money in the Bank history, having competed in and lost 7 of the matches. Conversely to Kofi, the male stars with a 100% win rate in that match type are John Cena, Braun Strowman, Brock Lesnar, Big E, and Otis. And the only woman who is currently undefeated in a Money in the Bank ladder match is Io Sky, who of course won last year in 2023. Io of course cashed in on Bianca Belair and won the WWE Women's Championship, which is the most cashed in on women's title, with 4 different challengers cashing in and collecting it from both its time as the Raw Women's Championship to now. In the case of the men, the WWE title is also the most cashed in on belt, with 11 different cash-ins targeting the championship since the briefcase's inception. The original World Heavyweight Championship follows closely behind it at 8 cash-ins, which if you count the new one as a continuation of that lineage, it's technically 9, I guess. The least cash-in on belt that's actually received a cash-in, of course, is the United States title with just 1. And while, as I mentioned earlier, the US title is the only non-world title that's received a cash-in, people such as Otis have teased cashing in on the tag titles. So, based on that, we can assume the tag championships are also subject to cash-ins. In fact, the only titles that have been available in the WWE that haven't really seen teased cash-ins are those in NXT, as well as the 24/7 title, I guess. But if the latter happened, I would assume the information that God is dead to be true. Anywho, another truth about Money in the Bank as a match was that both Chris Jericho and former WWE writer Brian Gewirtz came up with the concept, specifically as a means to give more guys something meaningful to do on the WrestleMania card. And overall, the birth of this concept has led to 15 superstars winning a world title for the very first time in their careers. One of those superstars is of course Seth Rollins, who is also the only superstar in history who has cashed in mid-match and walked out with the championship, which he of course did at Mania and was the only guy to ever cash in at the Showcase of the Immortals until Damian Priest cashed in earlier this year. And you might remember that Damian Priest of course won the Money in the Bank contract at the event itself, which by the way, out of all the stipulation pay-per-views such as Fatal 4-Way, Hell in a Cell, and TLC, it is the only stipulation pay-per-view to survive. And well, considering it's a stip built off the idea of ladder matches, one would assume it's basically a yearly injury scare, considering it's definitely more taxing on the body than a standard wrestling match. However, to date, there hasn't been a single major injury that's occurred in either the men's or women's matches. Well, unless you count Baron Corbin murdering both Aleister Black and Rey Mysterio by chucking the pair off of Titan Towers. And well folks, those are 20-ish things you needed to know about WWE's Money in the Bank event. Which fact was your favorite, and are there any that I missed that you know of? Let me know all that in the comments down below, and hey ho, while you're headed down that way, be sure to leave a like on the video, as it tells me very clearly that this sort of content is something I should look to do more of in the future. And well, if you want to catch any of my future content, be sure to subscribe, as I try to get 2 videos out a week here on the channel, and I think you just might like some of them. For now though, I think I'm gonna dip. So as always, I hope you stay safe, and that was Dylightful.